In the cold void of interstellar space, humanity's patience was worn thin under the weight of fragile diplomacy with the galactic Concordium. Captain Elara Voss stood on the bridge of the Celestial Vanguard, her gaze locked onto the shimmering expanse of stars, her mind a whirlpool of calculations and restrained fury. The latest missive from the Concordium, a tepid excuse for the relentless provocations humanity had endured, lay crumpled on the console before her, its words as hollow as the promises they had repeatedly broken. Elara's fingers hovered over the holodisplay, the temptation to issue a command that could shatter the uneasy peace itching beneath her skin. But she hesitated. Patience and resilience were humanity's hallmarks, the virtues that had carried them through centuries of adversity, from enduring the ravages of Earth's climate collapse to rebuilding after the devastating Martian uprising. Yet, standing here, with centuries of insults and exploitation piling like debris in a collapsing star, she wondered, what did patience truly gain? Incoming transmission, Captain, announced Lieutenant Arlen, his voice strained. From the Ceryn delegation. The name alone made Elara's stomach churn. The Ceryn were a particularly insidious species within the Concordium, their serpentine forms and forked tongues as metaphorically sharp as they were literal. Their ambassador, Councillor Ceryn, had been the architect of countless indignities leveled against humanity, from imposing crippling trade restrictions on essential resources to rerouting humanitarian relief efforts for alleged security concerns, each cloaked in the guise of bureaucratic necessity. "Patch it through," Elara ordered, her voice clipped. The bridge fell silent, the crew's collective anticipation palpable as the holodisplay flickered to life, revealing Ceryn's elongated, scaled visage. His golden eyes gleamed with calculated malice. "Captain Voss," Ceryn hissed, his voice a low, grating purr. "What a privilege it must be to represent such persistent creatures." Elara's jaw tightened. "Counselor, you'll forgive me if I skip the pleasantries. What is it you want?" Ceryn's expression twisted into a parody of a smile. "Such impatience, Captain. A hallmark of your kind. I am merely reaching out to express concern over your recent movements. Your fleet's presence in Sector Delta 435 is unsettling to certain Concordium members. They feel it provocative." Elara's fingers curled into fists. The fleet's movements were a direct response to repeated territorial encroachments by Concordium forces. These incursions, thinly veiled as exploratory missions, were impossible to ignore. Yet humanity was expected to tolerate these incursions without question. Her voice, when it came, was as sharp as a blade. "The fleet's movements are defensive. Perhaps if the Concordium ceased its unauthorized—" "Oh, come now," Ceryn interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension. "Let us not dwell on semantics. The Concordium values harmony above all. Surely you would not jeopardize such a cherished ideal over minor misunderstandings?" Harmony. The word was a mockery, wielded to justify centuries of marginalization and exploitation disguised as unity. For centuries, humanity had been relegated to the fringes of Concordium society, their contributions undervalued, their sovereignty trampled under the guise of galactic unity. Elara's patience, already worn thin, snapped. "Counselor," she said, her voice low but laced with steel, "if harmony is what you seek, perhaps the Concordium should reconsider its habit of treating humanity as an afterthought. You speak of unity, yet your actions tell a different story. Do not mistake our restraint for weakness." Ceryn's golden eyes narrowed, his forked tongue flicking briefly. "A curious statement, Captain. One might interpret it as a threat." "Interpret it however you like," Elara shot back. "But understand this, humanity will not be pushed any further." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Elara turned to her crew, their expressions ranging from unease to grim determination. "Status report," she barked, needing action to ground her roiling emotions. Lieutenant Arlen cleared his throat. "Scans indicate increased Concordium activity along the border. Multiple vessels, including Ceryn warships, are positioned near Sector Delta 435. They've deployed a network of surveillance drones." Elara nodded, her mind racing. The Concordium was testing their resolve, baiting humanity into a reaction they could frame as aggression. But this time, humanity wouldn't play by their rules. Recall the fleet to defensive formation beta. Activate counter-surveillance protocols. Let's remind them we're watching too. As the crew moved to carry out her orders, Elara gripped the edge of the command console, her nails digging into the metal. Her mind churned with images of Concordium ships steadily advancing into human space. Their arrogance felt suffocating, their disdain cutting like a blade, each act of defiance etched vividly in her memory. She drew a sharp breath, steeling herself against the simmering anger that threatened to erupt. The Concordium's provocations were more than an affront to humanity's pride, they were a threat to their survival. If they continued to bow and scrape, they would be devoured piece by piece, their sovereignty eroded until nothing remained. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, Elara activated a secure channel. The face that appeared on the screen was that of Admiral Reyes, the leader of humanity's military council. His weathered features betrayed the weight of his responsibilities. "Captain Voss," he greeted her. "I've read your latest report. I take it the TRZN's antics haven't improved?" "No, sir," Elara replied. "If anything, they're escalating. I believe they're trying to provoke us into a misstep." Reyes nodded grimly. "That aligns with our intelligence. The Concordium has been consolidating power, leveraging its member species against us. They see humanity as a nuisance, a potential threat they'd rather neutralize before we become too strong. Then we need to show them we're not to be trifled with," Elara said, her voice firm. "We can't keep playing defense. It's time we took the initiative." Reyes studied her for a moment before responding. "What are you proposing?" Elara hesitated, knowing the weight of her words. "A demonstration of strength. Something that makes it clear humanity won't be bullied any longer." Reyes leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "We've been developing contingency plans for such a scenario. I'll authorize the activation of Operation Iron Resolve. You'll have full command of the fleet. But understand this, Captain, if we proceed, there's no turning back. The Concordium will see it as an act of defiance, perhaps even war." Elara met his gaze, unflinching. "I understand, sir. But I believe it's a risk we have to take. For too long, we've compromised. It's time we drew a line." Reyes nodded. "Very well. The fleet is yours. Make it count." As the transmission ended, Elara felt a surge of determination. Humanity's patience had been its armor, but now it would forge the decisive strike to protect their sovereignty and ensure their survival. The line had been drawn. And this time, they would not falter. The Celestial Vanguard cut through the darkness of space with the precision of a blade, its hull gleaming faintly against the distant starlight. On the bridge, Captain Elara Voss paced, her mind churning as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports from the Concordium border. The Concordium's vessels had doubled their presence in Delta 435, and the deployment of surveillance drones had grown increasingly invasive. Humanity's fleet stood ready, a formidable wall of firepower and determination, resolved to act and break their silence for good. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Reyes," Lieutenant Arlen announced, breaking the tense silence. On screen, Elara ordered, halting her stride. The Admiral's face appeared, lined with the weight of decades of leadership. "Captain Voss," Reyes began, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "Reconnaissance confirms a TRZN command ship has taken position at the edge of the Concordium's forward line. It's a bold move. They're practically daring us to respond." Elara's jaw tightened. "A provocation," she said. "And a potential opportunity." Reyes nodded. "Exactly. Intelligence indicates that this command ship acts as the nerve center for their surveillance network, orchestrating their operations across the sector. If we disable it, we'll disrupt their operations across the sector. But make no mistake, Captain, this is high stakes. Any overt action will likely escalate the situation." Elara's mind raced. Striking the TRZN ship would send a clear message, asserting humanity's resolve, but it could also ignite an all-out conflict, risking devastating retaliatory strikes on human colonies and dragging them into a brutal war with staggering casualties. Still, humanity could not afford to appear weak. "Understood, sir. We'll proceed with caution. I'll lead a strike team myself." Reyes' expression softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. "Be decisive, Captain. The Concordium thrives on hesitation." As the transmission ended, Elara turned to her crew. "Lieutenant Arlen, prepare the Vanguard for an engagement. Tactical analysis of the TRZN ship's capabilities, now." The bridge sprang into action, the hum of activity a sharp contrast to the stillness of space outside. Within moments, the holodisplay lit up with a detailed schematic of the TRZN command ship. Its design was sleek and angular, bristling with weaponry and layered with advanced shielding. "Their primary defense systems rely on a centralized power core," Arlen reported. "If we target it directly, we can disable the ship without destroying it outright." Elara nodded. "Good. We'll need precision strikes. Coordinate with the fleet, the Vanguard will lead the assault." Minutes later, the Celestial Vanguard surged toward the Concordium's forward line, flanked by two smaller frigates. As they closed in, the TRZN command ship loomed larger on the viewscreen, its dark hull illuminated by the glow of its engines. The tension on the bridge was palpable, each crew member focused on their station, their movements precise. "We're in range," Arlen announced. "The TRZN ship is powering up its weapons." "Evasive maneuvers," Elara ordered. "Prepare ion cannons for a targeted strike. Focus on their power core." The Vanguard weaved through the void as enemy fire lit up the space around them. Elara's commands were swift and decisive, her voice a steady anchor in the chaos. The Vanguard's ion cannons fired in coordinated bursts, their blue streaks slicing through the darkness to impact the TRZN ship's shields. The enemy vessel shuddered under the assault, its defenses flickering but holding. "Shields at 80%, Arlen reported. "Their counterfire is intensifying." Elara's eyes narrowed. "Redirect auxiliary power to shields. Maintain offensive pressure. We can't let them recover." The Vanguard pressed the attack. Its frigate escorts maneuvered deftly, deflecting incoming fire. The TRZN ship retaliated with a relentless barrage of energy blasts, each streak of plasma lighting up the void like a storm breaking in the darkness. The bridge shook with each impact, but the crew held firm, their training and resolve unyielding. At last, a concentrated volley from the Vanguard breached the enemy's shields, striking the power core directly. "Direct hit," Arlen confirmed, his voice tinged with relief. "Their systems are destabilizing." Elara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before focusing on the next step. "Move us into position for boarding. We need to secure their command data." As the Vanguard closed in, a boarding team assembled in the ship's hangar. Elara joined them, donning her combat armor and holstering her plasma pistol. Her presence was a steadying force, her leadership inspiring confidence in the team as they moved with precision and focus, their actions reflecting the calm resolve she exuded even under immense pressure. "We're not just soldiers," she reminded them. "We're humanity's line in the sand. Let's make this count." The boarding pods launched, slamming into the TRZN ship's hull with precision. The team breached the airlock, the hiss of decompressing air punctuating the tense silence. Weapons raised, they advanced cautiously, each step punctuated by the rhythmic thud of boots on the cold, metallic floor. The acrid stench of scorched circuitry hung heavy in the air, clawing at their senses. Shadows danced erratically under the flicker of damaged lights, each movement an eerie illusion that kept their fingers tight on the triggers. The TRZN resistance was immediate and fierce, their serpentine forms darting through the shadows as they fired energy weapons with lethal accuracy. Elara's team moved with practiced coordination, their training evident in every step and shot. She led from the front, her plasma pistol cutting down enemies with ruthless efficiency. The corridors echoed with the sounds of battle, the clash of humanity's determination against the TRZN's ferocity. At last, they reached the command center. The door was heavily reinforced, but a well-placed explosive charge breached it, revealing a room filled with holographic displays and control terminals. The TRZN officers inside turned to face them, their golden eyes gleaming with defiance. "Secure the room," Elara ordered, her voice cutting through the din. The team spread out, neutralizing the remaining resistance and taking control of the terminals. Elara approached the central console, her fingers flying over the controls as she accessed the ship's systems. "Captain, we've got it," one of her officers reported. "Command data is downloading now." Elara nodded, her focus unyielding. The data contained critical intelligence on the Concordium's operations, a potential game-changer in humanity's struggle. But as the download neared completion, the ship's alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. "Captain, the power core's destabilization is accelerating," another officer warned. "This ship won't hold together much longer." Elara's mind raced. "How much longer for the download?" 30 seconds, came the reply. "Hold the line," Elara commanded. "We're not leaving without that data." The team held their ground as the ship shuddered around them, the walls groaning under the strain. At last, the console beeped, signaling the download's completion. "We've got it," Elara confirmed. "Fall back to the pods. Now." The team retreated with precision, fending off sporadic resistance as they made their way back to the boarding pods. They launched just as the Tyrannical ship's core finally gave out, the vessel erupting in a blinding explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through space. Back aboard the Vanguard, Elara removed her helmet, her expression a mix of exhaustion and resolve. The data they had secured was a trove of strategic insights, locations of hidden Concordium outposts, supply routes, and covert operations. It was more than intelligence, it was a weapon, one that could shift the balance of power in humanity's favor. Elara stared at the screen, already mapping the next steps, decrypting and analyzing the data, fortifying vulnerable colonies, and preparing a strike on the Concordium's weakest point. The cost of their actions was only beginning to unfold, but she knew there was no turning back. The data they had secured was invaluable, but the cost of their actions was only beginning to unfold. Humanity had taken a bold step, one that would echo across the stars. And Elara knew, with unshakable certainty, that there was no turning back. The Concordium's retaliation came swifter than even the most cautious among humanity's leaders had predicted. Within hours of the Celestial Vanguard's return to human space, Concordium vessels began amassing at the border. Hundreds of ships formed a daunting wall, their sleek, angular hulls bristling with weaponry and glowing faintly with the menacing light of charged energy cores, a display of overwhelming force designed to intimidate and dominate. The once fragile detente between humanity and the alien coalition disintegrated into a storm of accusations, ultimatums, and strategic maneuvering. And at its heart, Captain Elara Voss stood unwavering, a figure of resilience amidst the chaos. In the darkened war room aboard the Vanguard, holographic projections of the sector flickered to life. The gathered officers and strategists spoke in hushed tones, their words tinged with urgency. Elara's gaze swept over the images of Concordium fleets, massive formations of ships poised for a coordinated strike. Humanity's fleet, though outnumbered, held their defensive configuration with unshakable resolve, their readiness reflecting years of preparation for this inevitable confrontation. Preliminary analysis suggests they'll focus their initial assault on the Arcadia system, Lieutenant Arlen reported, pointing to the highlighted sector. Its strategic position and resource output make it a prime target. Elara nodded, her mind already calculating. Arcadia wasn't just a logistical hub, it was home to millions of civilians, families who had built their lives on its fertile lands and thriving cities, trusting in humanity's promise of protection. Its settlements, spread across lush valleys and vibrant trade centers, were particularly vulnerable to orbital strikes and ground invasions, leaving those who had nowhere to evacuate at the mercy of their attackers. A direct attack there would cripple humanity's ability to respond effectively and shatter morale. Reinforce Arcadia's defenses, Elara ordered. Deploy half our frigates to form a protective barrier. I want missile platforms and orbital cannons fully operational within the hour. Admiral Reyes' voice crackled through the comms, his tone grim. Captain, the Concordium's official statement accuses humanity of an unprovoked act of aggression. They've demanded our immediate surrender. Elara's jaw tightened. And what is our response? Reyes hesitated for a beat. The Council is convening to discuss terms. But Captain, I don't think I need to tell you where this is headed. No, sir, Elara said firmly. I understand perfectly. Surrender isn't an option. The Admiral's image flickered, his gaze hardening. Then prepare for war, Captain. Humanity is counting on you. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in heavy silence. Elara turned to her officers. We've faced impossible odds before. This time is no different. Remember what's at stake. Let's show the Concordium that humanity doesn't break. As orders were relayed and the room emptied, Elara lingered by the holographic display. Her fingers traced the edge of Arcadia's image, her thoughts churning. 4 centuries, humanity had bent under the weight of Concordium's dominance. Now, they stood at the precipice of rebellion, a chance to seize their future or lose everything. The first strike came at dawn, local time on Arcadia. Concordium ships, led by the menacing silhouette of a Ceryn battleship, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their initial salvo targeted orbital defenses, precision strikes reducing missile platforms and cannons to debris. Human ships engaged immediately, their coordinated firepower pushing back against the overwhelming assault. But the Concordium's sheer numbers began to tip the scales. Elara's voice cut through the comms chatter. All units, focus fire on the Ceryn battleship. That ship is the key to their strategy. If we take it out, we disrupt their coordination and turn this battle in our favor. Move now, there's no room for error. The Vanguard surged forward, ion cannons igniting the void with sharp bursts of blue light. Enemy ships scrambled, their evasive maneuvers desperate against the flagship's unrelenting onslaught. Each blast carved a path through their ranks, scattering formations like prey fleeing an apex predator. The chaos rippled outward, fractures in their coordination spreading with every strike. Flanked by frigates, it became a spearhead aimed at the heart of the enemy formation. The battle unfolded in a maelstrom of energy blasts and shrapnel, each explosion casting eerie light across the void. On the bridge, Elara's commands came with unyielding precision, her crew responding with synchronized efficiency. Shields at 60%, Arlen reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Enemy reinforcements incoming. Elara clenched her fists. Redirect power from non-essential systems to shields. Signal the frigates to tighten formation. We hold the line. As the Vanguard closed in on the Ceryn battleship, the enemy's fire intensified. The Vanguard's hull groaned under the strain, alarms blaring as critical systems flickered. Yet the ship pressed on, its weapons tearing through the battleship's shields. Finally, a concentrated volley from the Vanguard breached the Ceryn vessel's hull, igniting a chain reaction of explosions. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Elara's focus remained sharp. A flicker of exhaustion crossed her features, her shoulders heavy with the weight of command. Status report. Command ship neutralized, Arlen confirmed. Enemy fleet is scattering, but their secondary forces are regrouping. Reposition our forces, Elara ordered. Don't let them recover. And keep Arcadia's evacuation routes secure. The battle raged for hours, each side exchanging devastating blows. Humanity's fleet, though battered, fought with unrelenting determination. At last, as the first rays of Arcadia's sun pierced the darkness, the Concordium fleet began to withdraw. The human ships held position, their silence a defiant statement: humanity had not been broken. In the aftermath, Elara stood on the bridge, gazing out at the debris-strewn void. The cost had been staggering, dozens of ships lost, including the stalwart frigate Resolute, whose captain rammed the vessel into an enemy cruiser to buy precious time for evacuees to escape Arcadia's surface. Countless lives were sacrificed, among them seasoned officers who had seen countless battles and young recruits who had only begun to prove their mettle, their bravery immortalized in the chaos of war. But they had held the line, proving to the galaxy that humanity would not bow. Admiral Reyes' image appeared on the comms. Captain Voss, you've done what many thought impossible. Arcadia stands, and so does humanity's resolve. Elara nodded, her expression resolute. We bought time, sir. But this is far from over. The Concordium will come back, and we need to be ready. Reyes' gaze softened, a rare glimmer of admiration in his eyes. With leaders like you, Captain, I have no doubt we will be. As the transmission ended, Elara turned to face her crew. This is just the beginning, she said. Prepare for the next engagement. Humanity's fight is far from over, and we're not backing down. Begin assessing supply lines and reinforcing critical outposts. We'll need every advantage for the battles ahead. The Concordium's second offensive came with calculated ferocity. Weeks after the Battle of Arcadia, humanity's defenders, battered and grieving their fallen comrades, braced for an even greater challenge. The Concordium's assault threatened vital systems like the Orion Relay and Arcadia's supply chains, each a lifeline for survival. Families on fragile outposts and soldiers on overextended lines held their breath as the battle for their future began. This time, they brought their most advanced fleets, deploying experimental weaponry and relentless tactics designed to crush resistance. Humanity's unity and resourcefulness would be tested as never before. On the bridge of the Celestial Vanguard, Captain Elara Voss surveyed the chaotic expanse of the Orion sector. Dozens of enemy vessels swarmed around a key relay station, their concentrated fire threatening to cut off humanity's communication network. Across the holographic display, warnings lit up like battle cries, their urgent signals marking each critical system under siege and demanding immediate action. Around the war room, the air buzzed with clipped commands and the low hum of machinery. Officers leaned into their stations, tension etched into every glance and hurried movement, their voices rising above the constant thrum of tactical alerts. "Captain," Lieutenant Arlen called, his voice strained. "The relay station's shields are failing. We've got minutes before it's completely vulnerable." Elara clenched her fists. The relay station wasn't just a strategic asset, it was their last remaining hub for coordinating fleet movements across this sector. If it fell, the Concordium would sweep through unopposed. "Divert power to forward shields," Elara ordered. "Bring us between the relay station and their fleet. We'll buy time for reinforcements to arrive." The Vanguard surged forward, its cannons unleashing a relentless barrage that lit the void with fiery streaks. Enemy ships scattered in disarray, their desperate attempts to regroup faltering under the unyielding assault. The beleaguered station stood momentarily shielded, its shields flickering with renewed hope as the Vanguard absorbed the brunt of the enemy fire. As energy blasts rippled across the Vanguard's shields, the bridge shook violently, sparks flying from overloaded systems. But the crew held firm, their determination mirroring Elara's unyielding resolve. Across the sector, humanity's fleets engaged in desperate battles, each commander employing creative tactics to offset the Concordium's technological advantage. On the industrial moon of Ceryn, guerrilla fighters rigged entire mining facilities to collapse, crippling enemy ground forces. In the Sigma Nebula, civilian freighters equipped with makeshift cloaking devices harried supply lines, delaying reinforcements. Despite the relentless pressure, humanity endured. On the industrial moon of Ceryn, guerrilla fighters rigged mining charges to ambush enemy forces, turning the tide in desperate skirmishes. Among them, Sergeant Idris Navarro led a final charge, detonating the charges manually when the remote triggers failed, buying his squad precious minutes to escape. At the relay station, engineers worked tirelessly under fire to restore shielding systems, their ingenuity keeping critical defenses operational. These moments of resilience proved that ingenuity and courage could overcome even the harshest odds. And as reinforcements finally reached the Orion sector, the tide began to turn. The Vanguard spearheaded a decisive counterattack, its weapons cutting through the Concordium flagship's defenses. At last, a devastating ion salvo breached the enemy ship's core, igniting an explosion that lit the void like a newborn star. Cheers erupted across the Vanguard's bridge, but Elara's gaze remained fixed on the smoldering wreckage. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady. Arlen straightened, his tone brimming with cautious optimism. "Relay station secure. Enemy forces are retreating." A wave of relief swept over the crew, but Elara knew this victory was only part of a larger war. The following weeks saw humanity rallying like never before. Engineers worked around the clock to reinforce defenses and repair damaged fleets. Scientists accelerated research on captured Concordium technology, unlocking new advancements that would narrow the gap. Diplomats reached out to alien species previously subjugated by the Concordium, forging fragile but promising alliances. And then, the moment came. Humanity, united and resolute, launched an audacious strike on the Concordium's central command, a station hidden deep within a star cluster at the galactic core. Intelligence obtained from the Arcadia battle provided the key to its location. With their finest ships and bravest soldiers, humanity advanced into the heart of enemy territory. The assault was brutal, a crescendo of everything the war had built toward, marked by sacrifice and unyielding resolve. Pilots pushed their ships beyond their limits, their desperate maneuvers winning crucial moments. On the Vanguard, medics worked tirelessly to save injured crew under constant fire, their heroism a stark reminder of the human cost woven into the fabric of this final stand. In the chaos, the Celestial Vanguard faced its most harrowing moment as enemy ships encircled it, their firepower overwhelming. A daring maneuver by Lieutenant Arlen redirected auxiliary power to weapons, allowing a critical volley that pierced the enemy flagship's defenses. Amidst the fiery destruction, Elara's voice cut through the cacophony, rallying her crew to push forward and seize victory. The Concordium's defenses were formidable, their fleets vast. But humanity's strength lay not just in their weaponry, but in their resilience and ingenuity. Each ship, each fighter, each individual pushed beyond their limits, driven by the unshakable belief that this was their moment. At the center of the battle, the Celestial Vanguard led the charge. Elara, calm amidst the storm, coordinated the final strike on the Concordium command station. As the Vanguard's cannons unleashed their payload, the station's shields buckled, and explosions rippled through its superstructure. In a final act of defiance, the station's core detonated, scattering debris across the void. The Concordium's fleets, now leaderless and disorganized, fell into disarray. Across the galaxy, their grip crumbled as humanity's allies seized the opportunity to rise. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy tasted freedom from the Concordium's tyranny. Back aboard the Vanguard, Elara stood on the bridge, surrounded by her crew. The holodisplays showed images of celebration across human colonies and liberated worlds. Yet, amidst the cheers and jubilant displays, the atmosphere aboard the bridge remained somber, the crew's thoughts lingering on the sacrifices made to reach this moment. The contrast was stark, a reminder that victory often came at a heavy price. On Arcadia, crowds thronged the streets, raising banners and lighting lanterns that glowed like stars in the night sky. Families embraced beneath the open sky, their tears of relief mingling with laughter, a vivid testament to the cost and triumph of their freedom. For a moment, the weight of war lifted, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of triumph hard-earned. "It's over," Arlen said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Elara nodded, her expression resolute yet reflective. "For now. But we've shown the galaxy what humanity can achieve. We've proven that no power, no matter how great, can stand against those who refuse to be broken." As the crew cheered, Elara allowed herself a rare smile. They had not just survived, they had forged a future. One where humanity, resilient and unyielding, would be remembered not as victims, but as victors. And in the quiet of the bridge, as the stars stretched endlessly before them, Elara felt something she had not dared to in years: hope.